right. Okay, so Heather thought that it will be interesting
I've got
to
some
get.
screen. I don't know whether it belongs there or not.
What happened?
Recording.
Yeah, it is recording.
Sorry. If it's okay with you, it's okay with me.
Yes, it is. That's the whole idea.
Okay.
Heather was interested in how our relationship happened and how they developed. Do you remember anything of it? Do you want to talk about it?
We began it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I recall you came to one of our training programs, and we had quite a bit of contacts and exchanges and laughter, and we just kept on going on, and you guys invited us to England.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been a number of ways that we've been together over the years, and always with much pleasure.
I agree. I want to say, I don't know what will become of it, that one of the things that I appreciate the most about you and Miriam is that you never insisted on maintaining the difference between us and you. So after we stopped being trainees and we started to meet in England, and we had many meetings in England and at conferences, and we came to you, we actually became just people who meet, which I really appreciated and I really like.
Became what?
Say it again.
Became what? I missed the word.
Just people who meet, instead of teachers and students and.
Okay. Forgive me if every now and then I don't hear what you said, because my hearing is very deteriorated. I can still hear. I mean, I hear, normally.
Erv, when you don't hear me, you can lift a finger. I shall say it again.
Okay.
For me, what's interesting, and is anything that you want to tell, or to talk about, or to say, that it's connected to you and Gestalt and our community. How you came to Gestalt, why you stayed with Gestalt, who influenced you the most, what you think your influence has been, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's a big order.
Yes, it's a tall order.
I have written somewhat about it in an article a long time ago called "Stolen by Gypsies," and I've included it in my current book, which will be coming out in November. So, but fundamentally, what happened was that there was a group of people in Cleveland who had been to New York and witnessed the work of Fritz, and came back and wanted him to come to Cleveland, and they invited me to come to the workshop, and I did. And I was much impressed with both the simplicity and the power that he exhibited, partly through theory, even partly through his own magnetism.
Can you say more about this?
About what?
About his magnetism and about his theory and how it impacted you?
He was he had a presence that was very strong. He emanated a liveliness which was affirmed by the things that he said. He was very sharp in the details of what a person was saying, and he was very expert in creating experiments that worked in the sense of bringing people into some realizations that they would not otherwise easily have had. So I was impressed with the action factor and the simplicity of it. And I had previously been oriented toward how to transform psychotherapy into a more populist experience. And I thought I was getting into Gestalt therapy with that in mind. Like they had homework and other things which I thought you could do all by yourself. But actually Gestalt therapy did not do that. They had experiments in therapy, but they didn't have self-analytic experiments. But but I have followed through on that over the years, not as much as I would, I should have, because I got involved more with the teaching of Gestalt therapy and the therapeutic enterprise, and left behind the idea of therapy as a phenomenon relevant to everybody, not just those who need to solve a particular problem.
You sound like you regret it.
Well, I don't know what I would have given up for it, though. I mean, I do regret not having done more with it, but I don't think I was cut out for it very well anyway. I'm not a very, what shall I call it, socially enterprising or socially interactive on a high scale that you have to be if you're the center of a communal experience. You don't really have to be, but anyway, that was something that would have been very different. But I did some work in the 1960s, maybe even earlier, no, in the 1960s, in coffee houses. I think you probably know something of what I did there, but that was an attempt to get therapy into the everyday scene, the people that, how people saw their lives, quite beyond the question of did they have a particular problem.
So say more about what you did in the coffee shops.
Say
more about what you did in the coffee shops. Well, how did it look?
Well, it was at first, I wanted to get out of my office, and I knew a Unitarian minister. I said, do you have anything I can do at your church? And he said, yeah, we have a coffee house. It was a small one. You can come and sit at a table and just talk to people.
Wonderful.
Which I did. And it was an interesting conversation and an interesting in and out phenomenon where people might be engaged and then leave, because it wasn't a set pattern. It was people in a coffee house. And but then they moved into a larger one, and there I worked from the stage. It wasn't a large one, but it probably accommodated 150 people. And then I set up themes, and we would play out the themes. There'd be some discussion of them, like hippies and policemen. Hippies were a big deal in those days. So, and they had trouble with policemen. So the themes such as hippies and policemen, and then people would role play conversation between hippie and policeman, and the audience would react. And so it was a communal event relating to that theme. And that theme-oriented perspective is something that's not very common in psychotherapy or in Gestalt therapy. But I think it's a fundamental human requirement to deal with the themes of life. Now, I mentioned hippies and policemen, but I could have mentioned ambition. I could have mentioned disappointment. I could have mentioned forgetfulness, whatever the things are that matter to people. In fact, in the recent in the recent writing I've written about a session I had much later on in an evolution of psychotherapy conference, in which I'm 98 years old, and I sometimes get lost in the middle of a sentence. And that has just happened to me. I know where I was going, and we will all miss it terribly if I don't get there.
I'm sure we shall. But now we know that you're 98 years old. This is very impressive. I thought you were 97.
I was a year ago.
Yes.
Of course, I was some years ago too. But
Irv, as you lost where you were going, I want to say two things. One, I love what you say about the coffee shops, and I would love to hear a bit more. But before that, I'm interested if you have some personal impact or impression that you have from that first meeting with Fritz. A piece of work that you're willing to share or something.
Say again, did I have some personal influence?
If you have some memory of the influence that Fritz had on you when you first met, or the group, or somebody in the group.
Well, I can't say that I had this awareness at the time, but I'm aware now, and I'm very interested now in the concept of enchantment and how overlooked that is in the therapy experience. People very often think of therapy as a chore to solve terrible problems. They're not enchanted by it, but underneath they are, because we are all enchanted with the mystery of life. We're enchanted with new experience. We're enchanted with fresh engagement. There's a lot of enchantment in the world that we might normally think of simply as pleasure or fascination, but there's something about enchantment that goes beyond that into incorporating the universe and the mystery of life and the valuing of it. And so there was something in both the meeting with Fritz and also our group that formed as a result of it, because when we met with him, he didn't live in Cleveland, he lived in New York. Mm-hmm. We went on as a group, and we would meet once a week. And we just explored all kinds of human phenomena together. And I found that very compelling. And there's something of a, I don't know what to call it, something of a holiday quality to the experience of therapy if it's conducted in a way that doesn't emphasize the horror of it. But it's something about having a holiday. And in these groups, not these groups, this group in Cleveland, every time we met, it felt like a holiday.
Fantastic.
And we met in a, one of the people in the group, Meyer Krillman, had a house which was quite accommodating and large, had wonderful wallpaper, lively and fresh, and it was a pleasure to walk into the house. So I realize now, although I didn't think of it then, the setting makes a difference, and that it's no accident that churches are considerable architectural experiences, and synagogues also. I don't think we make as much of it as the cathedrals, but we do quite a bit of it. I mean, you go into a synagogue, many of them, they're very absorbing, and they give you a sense of specialness of something that goes beyond everyday conversation. And not to underestimate the everyday conversation, but there is something of the specialness of particular moments and particular aspects of life, which don't have to happen all the time. But whenever they happen, they represent much more than the moment. So when I go into synagogue and I pray, I haven't done that for a while, but I grew up Orthodox and praying a lot. In those days, I didn't know what I was saying, but I was always enthralled with the communal vibrancy of the holiday and being in that synagogue together and all saying the same thing at the same time with a kind of lyricism that I didn't understand then and would not have identified as I am trying to do now, but which entered into me as a very spiritful and affirming quality about life isn't so bad after all.
I'm fascinated with what you say. I think you talked about coffee places and the church turning into a stage, and you talked about the physical, the atmosphere, the ambience of where we are, and you gave it some importance. And now you add the synagogues and into it the holiday and the community, and it's all on, you know, what, 60, 70 years, still keeping the same experience. I love it.
Yeah. I haven't done much in synagogues for a long time, but I
did not. No.
I used to go all the time. I used to pray every morning. I didn't know what I was saying. I tried to get through it very fast. I remember I'd be doing this morning stuff, and my father was in the doorway, and I was speeding through it because I didn't want to take that much time.
Sure.
And he gave me what I experienced as a dirty look, but he never told me not to do it, or he never told me to slow down, or he never gave me any advice. And I remember thinking, I wish he would do that so that I would do it. I'll
Nice.
never do it on my own. So
it's fascinating because some of what you say, but what I make of what you say, is that understanding is not everything. That you read something you didn't understand, you rush through it, and still in your body, you have a very profound experience of togetherness and community.
exactly, I didn't have any understanding at all, and I was enthralled with some of the worshipful experiences and the cantorial music and the groupings of people all coming together. And even though we didn't know each other, it wasn't a group experience like we have in psychotherapy. But anyway, all of this has not been incorporated into psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, a medical specialty even though we're not medical people, many of us, but it's basically even those who are not medically trained, still medically oriented in terms of something is wrong with somebody, you try to help them with it, and then he goes away. And I've had some very fascinating experiences as a patient in therapy. And one of them was very early in the game. I was a graduate student. And thank you. I was a graduate student. So one of the course options was to be in therapy for 30 sessions or 2 semesters. And I took it. But I remember when I first went there, the enthrallment I had with knowing I was in a waiting room, which was quite exotically furnished for a European man. And it felt like a new world, but it also felt like whoever was in here before me, and that I was waiting for my turn, that they were unfolding their minds in a way that I had never experienced. And I remember being enthralled with that aspect of things, and that was so much a part of my experience of that. I don't think neither one of us thought of it as an enchanting experience. It was. Because that wasn't our mode. We were trying to solve problems. And I think that we are at a stage in our development where we can move beyond that, beyond the medical experience. I'm not knocking the medical experience. I think it's been extremely valuable, but it has overlooked the human quality that fundamentally is offered with very, in terms unfriendly to many of us, by religion. Therapy doesn't require a belief in God or the hereafter, or there a lot of rituals would be unimportant, and those are, I would say, the growing of the social mind. But we've sort of ignored the novelty of that as it relates to a transformation of the religious experience, and thought of it as something entirely separate, and tried to not distract, but tried to extract us from the religious experience. And Freud, of course, was a master in doing that, and he wrote all kinds of things that were anti-religion, and even though some people claimed him to be part of a religion, he always disclaimed it and scoffed at it. And at the same time, he deplored the idea that what he was teaching was only curative oriented, that it was a much larger view of life and having much more import than the actual psychoanalytic experience would offer. I don't mean that it wouldn't offer it, it would, because there was an exploration of the mysteries of life in the psychoanalysis of those days. But in any case, there's been a notable and severe separation between psychotherapy and religion. But what I think, and I don't know how to say it in a way that would be connected to the people of psychotherapy, that that religion has been hijacked by supernaturalism. And that religion is basically, in its generic meaning, it's how to examine your life, how to live it, how to live together, and how to make sense of it.
Which, of course, is exactly what psychotherapy is.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. But somehow we don't want to connect ourselves with this other because there are many aspects of it which we don't like. And I don't either.
Yes.
But that's history. So the problem is, how do you evolve from some historical familiarity into some changes which are not all that great? But I know I've described in my recent writings of what I call the life focus group. And I have a colleague, Carolyn Pelton, who has started a couple of these groups in her county. It's not in San Diego. And in introducing it, there were some people who said, I don't want to come into a group. They just brainwash your mind and make you conform. And the people who came, that this is what frees my mind. This is what opens me to novelty. This is not someone trying to make me be as they think I should be. This is someone encouraging me to be as I am.
Fantastic.
So those are so fundamental, but they're very foreign to psychotherapy circles.
How, yeah. I want to hear more about you. I just realized that I don't know where you were born.
I was born in Czechoslovakia.
That I do know it. Sorry. Yes, I do know it.
I came over. I say I came over. I was brought over when I was 2 years old to the United States.
Where were you born in Czechoslovakia? Which city? Which village?
Oh, it's called Menzela Borca. It's a strange name, but it's got something to do with the border between Czechoslovakia and Poland, I think.
Right, right. Have you ever been back there, Irv?
No, but I did get to Prague, and I was doing a workshop in the country of Czechoslovakia, up in the mountains and such. And I wanted to take a day off to visit Menzela Borca.
Yeah. And
I was even given the opportunity that someone would guide me, but I had a bad knee problem then. And I didn't think I could manage it. Didn't go. So I missed that opportunity. But I've heard a lot about it because my family came from there.
Yeah. So you've never been there, and have you ever been to Israel?
Yes, I've been to Israel.
Right.
Yeah.
Before you knew me, probably.
What's that?
Probably before we met.
No. I don't know that before we met. I don't remember the relationship, but
we met in 81.
I don't remember.
It's okay. It's not important. I was thinking not about me, but about you coming from an Orthodox family. And
to what?
I'm thinking about you coming from an Orthodox family and that you went to synagogue and you prayed in Hebrew. That's why you don't know what it was.
Well, I used to think, I wish I knew what I was saying. And then later on, when I had English translations, I said, I'm glad I didn't know what I was saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So did your parents speak Czech to you, or you grew up in English?
They spoke English.
Right. Interesting. So do you feel connected to Europe? Do you feel connected to the variations of Gestalt in Europe, or you are
Well,
American?
I don't know about Gestalt in Europe, but I feel connected with Europe. I mean, that's so much of our cultural understandings emanate from there. So yeah, I feel very connected to it.
Right.
I remember one time, Miriam and I were in Amsterdam. We arrived at our hotel and we wanted to go for a walk. So we went out for a walk and I was about to cross the street and I could have burst out crying.
Mm.
And I said, I've come home at last.
Wow.
I have no idea how that could happen. I do know that where we came from, Czechoslovakia, we did go through Holland, but I think we went through Rotterdam, wasn't it? Maybe the architecture would have been similar, but it was a very moving experience and it's never happened again, but I valued it a lot.
Maybe the smell or something. Maybe the smell or something in more physical.
Do not know.
No.
I know that there was a hotel there, no, a restaurant there. And Miriam and I were sitting at a table. A man came over with a menu, which was in English. I said, how did you know to give us menus in English? He said, I can tell by your shoes. So who knows what the standards are?
So as you brought Miriam into the story, the minute I thought about her as well, it's interesting. I thought Miriam and you said Miriam. How do we put Miriam into this story of your life and Gestalt?
Well, it's an interesting, peculiar combination because when I first got into Gestalt therapy, this was in 1953, Miriam was not a psychologist and she was not even a graduate student. She did some work here and there, but she's mostly at home. Mm-hmm. And which she did until the kids got old enough to be gone for a good bit of the day in school. And then she went back to graduate school in 1962. She graduated in 1967. And then we had a very close connection in terms of our work. Perhaps not as much in Cleveland, but we were both part of the faculty. So we had a lot of things in common there. But she had her own practice and I had my own practice. And so there was that kind of separate existence. But she became very important in the Gestalt Institute in Cleveland. Although I don't think she ever got over the idea that she was thought of as my wife instead of herself. And when we went to California, we moved there in 1973, she felt inspired. I mean, she said, I feel like I've been let out of school. And she became free as a free agent in psychotherapy. And we were doing things together before we left Cleveland, but not the way we did after we got to San Diego. And in San Diego, of course, we did all of our programs jointly. And we never had any problem with that. I mean, I remember at the end of the day, I never felt like, I got to go home with this woman too. I was glad to be going home with her.
Wonderful. So in a way, going from Cleveland to San Diego to La Jolla was breaking free from something.
Yeah, it was. For me, it was not as much, well, I guess it was breaking free also, but I liked it in Cleveland. Miriam was felt the pressure uh, of various communities. Like we both had large families, we both had friends, we both had the institute, and wherever we were, we should have been somewhere else. And that wasn't as problematic for me as it was for her.
Hmm.
Closed in by it. But
I do remember, as your student, as your trainee, twice, I do remember that the lectures that you gave every morning together. And I do remember each one of you gave a lecture, held the whole morning. And I do remember how when you interrupted one another, you had a way of asking the other one to just wait, which was really, I remember you sulking a number of times, but I remember you sulking a number of times, sitting, like sulking, like she's like scolded. But it was always, as you said, the feeling was that, yes, at the end of the day, you're going to go home you're going to go home, and it was okay.
Yeah.
And it was okay to scold one another, because you did use to interrupt her quite a lot. I remember her saying to you once, more than once, "Irv, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you." And you were just laughing like you laughed now, and shut up, because it was her time, and vice versa. And I remember the lightness and the seriousness between the two of you, which was wonderful, because we didn't only study about Gestalt. We also studied about how it is to be a couple, and how it is to be co-trainers.
Yeah.
And I also learned a lot from you too about boundaries.
About what?
Boundaries. You kept your boundaries very clear.
Yes.
And when I cherish all of this, and I revisit it from time to time.
Yeah.
So on one hand, there was something very simple and open and intimate and private. And on the other hand, it was very clear where it ended and you went away. Yeah. Very nice, very nice. Very educating, not just nice.
Yeah.
I just noticed how many years it is since Miriam died.
How many years since what?
Since Miriam died.
Yeah, she died in 2001.
Yeah.
19 years. Yeah.
Special woman.
She had cancer, and she seemed to be over it. There's a 5-year period where you feel in danger, and she was about at the 5-year period. And I don't know whether it was a new one or the old one moving or what, but it came back again. And this time it was more more vicious.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember her very well, and very, sorry, what did you say?
We enjoyed our time in England with you guys.
We had some pretty good times in England together. One of them was in between her sickness. I remember we sat in a restaurant and she spoke about it, about being sick.
Uh-huh.
So I'm interested that you stayed a Gestalt person for all those years.
Well, Yeah, I liked the many of the principles, and they were fundamental to me. But I had a lot of trouble with some of the shtick. And
Say more, please.
well, like for example, one time, Fritz didn't like to use impersonal words like it.
Mm.
And he would call you on using the word it. So I said to him one day, Fritz, if I see drops coming from the sky, should I say I am raining?
And his answer was?
What's that?
And his answer was?
His answer was, let me, his answer wasn't anything. Okay. He didn't say that, but that's what it amounted to. But there's a lot of stuff like that were not just Gestalt therapy, but the times. And like the here and now, for a theory that is named Gestalt, to honor the here and now as the only thing that exists is ridiculous. The total misconception, because all experience has a background. And how do you, well, there were tricks. The trick was that, if you tell a story about some early experience, you're telling it in the present. Well, of course you're telling it in the present. There's no way to, but it's not about the present, it's about the past. And if you exclude the quality of context from your life, well, you can't, for one thing.
Of course not.
The human mind is not made that way. So there are things like here and now, and then you do your thing and I'll do my thing, and if we meet, okay, and if not, it can't be helped. What do you mean it can't be helped? You're a psychotherapist. How can you say it can't be helped? Well, I know what he meant. He meant, okay. Don't make a big deal out of it. But it was interpreted in this other way. And
like any religion.
60s, what?
Like any religion. You
That's
take what the rabbi said or the priest said, and it becomes narrow and dogmatic.
That's right. And so the idea of working with communal things was foreign to him. It was foreign to Isidore. Not only foreign in terms of whether they did it, but they didn't believe in it. I mean, individuality was primary, and relationship, not just individuality. Relationship was important, but it was narrow. But I don't think that was definitive. For me, it wasn't anyway. And I just took that as some of the problems. There's nothing so good that it doesn't have problems.
Nice.
You
I like what you say. Irv, I'm going to ask you a tough question for me. Maybe it's not tough for you. What would you like? What do you want to leave behind you? What do you want me or us to hold on to?
I don't know. My basic feeling is it's not going to make any difference to me.
Yeah, I understand. But it's going to make a difference to me.
Yeah. I remember one time Miriam did an experiment with somebody who was witness to his own funeral. And I don't remember the details, but it was very interesting for a person to deal with being in a position to recognize what normally would be unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't know how to say that. I would like people to think that I meant well, that I did the best I could, that I was not grudgeful. Those are some of the things that pop into my mind now. For 5 minutes later, I may say other things.
sure. But I like all three, and I can see you in them. And I wonder what you want us to, with you, because you're still here, and after you, you have some sharp conceptions of where Gestalt can go and what Gestalt can do differently and better.
Well,
and it does belong to the three things you just said, I'm sure, but I wonder about it.
Well, the thing I feel as a future that if I were younger, that I would go forward with, I find some way to go forward with it, is the transformation of psychotherapy into a communal event. By communal, I don't mean that you care about the community at large. I mean forming a congregation of people who come together to explore life and have some people who incorporate the wisdom of the non-ordinary religions into current thinking in a way that fills the mind. I mean, like, for example, if I say, if I say, I'm okay, you're okay, and that's okay, I think that's a very interesting thing to live by, but it's been never used in any but a statement of the casualness of life. Like, who the fuck cares? I'm okay, you're okay. No, I don't mean it that way. I mean, I am okay and you are okay, and let's know it. And let's find a way to confirm it. And
it is actually a tall order when you say it like this.
The whole thing is a tall order.
Yes.
Human beings were made with certain given contradictions that they will never totally resolve. I mean, the contradiction, for example, between what is happening now and what the expectation for the future is, or what's left over from the past. The mind, it's not what the mind is. You know, you might make a machine that will work that way, though I don't see how someone who isn't that way could make such a machine. I can't imagine a world of non-contradiction.
Yeah.
Now, I think that psychotherapy itself has had some wise things to offer. But if we go beyond psychotherapy into the non-religious atmosphere and take some of the things that Shakespeare said, some of the things that the poets of the ages said, like Keats and Shelley, and what some of the novelists say. I mean, what does Proust say? what does Proust tell us as a way of life? Proust is usually taken as a way of understanding some things about life, and even as an entertainment in life, but not as a guide. And I think human beings need guidance. And I don't mean necessarily guidance by another person, but guidance by a perspective. And that's how they live anyway. There's never been a time in history when a person has been free of the contradiction of what's happening now and what could happen. Even in the most primitive societies, they knew that certain trees bore fruit. They knew that certain animals were dangerous, and they paid attention.
I'm impressed and left with two words. One, attention. I'm left with two words, more than two, but attention, enchantment, space. I think that what you did at the church, at the coffee, at the cafe, was actually what you're talking about.
Yes, but you know that was the 1960s.
I know, and I listen with, I know, and I listen with sadness at how it was dropped.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole different involvement. Now, this thing I did at the church was a little like psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had nothing to do with the people outside of that session. There was no continuity except if they happen to come back again. Because it was a coffee house. And it's a whole different thing to have the frame of mind that says, I want to do that kind of thing. I didn't have that frame of mind. I suppose if I did, I would have wound up a rabbi. I could never, I mean, there's some aspects of being a rabbi that would have fitted me fine, but there are other aspects, there's no way in the world I could be it.
Which ones?
I couldn't be sociable like a rabbi is.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't want to be, I just don't know how.
Right.
And I couldn't feel that I am a partner to the grand knowing of the universe.
Right.
And you know, that's some of what comes to mind right away. But no, those are there.
It's enough. It's quite a lot.
No.
Erv, what else do you want me to know about you and the rest of the world that is going to watch this video?
What's that?
What else do you want me to know about you and the rest of the world that is going to watch this video?
I don't know why the words keep repeating themselves. I meant well.
That I know, I'm sure. Do I remember correctly that Miriam was some sort of a performer before she met you or when she met you?
A musician, a singer.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Vocalist with her orchestra in college. And she sang at people's weddings, and she sang in temple plays, and she had a beautiful voice. She never took the, I don't know what to call it, the chance to go to New York and be in the entertainment world, or wherever you have to go. She wasn't made that way, and I don't think she was made to tried to satisfy interviews, things like that. Anyway, she, again, I've had a second experience of what I did earlier. I was going someplace that is unforgettable and beautiful, and I'll never get because I can't remember.
I think you were talking about how she did not go to seek fame in New York.
Oh yeah, I remember what it was. So when we lived in Cleveland, she used to sing a lot in the house. And she played the piano and she sang, and that was a part of our household furnishing. And I had an office at home. My office was completely separated from the house by a waiting room that was in between, and the staircase that was between it was entirely sound from but in the waiting room you could hear into the house, and Miriam would be singing, and I never knew whether they were coming to hear her voice or coming to me for therapy. But she had a way of doing folk music that was just simply, there was a throb in it. There was a simple glistening. There was a kind of casual understanding. And that applied to things like Hugo Wolf in German, and it didn't matter. French, she particularly liked French folk music, and so she used to sing a lot.
I knew her for over 20 years and I never heard her sing.
Really? Oh, gee, that's too bad.
Yes, it is. Irv, what was the most challenging for you around our community, around Gestalt, around anything to do with you and your life? Oh, not most challenging, but challenging.
Yeah. I don't know that I thought of it this way, but I was a more, I can't say this is actually true. I was more conventional than the people I was around. And I had to incorporate what was right for me in that and what wasn't. And I didn't think about it much. I'm thinking about it now because you asked me, but I think that was an important thing. I know that I had a long relationship with Isidore Fromm.
The wrong relationship?
What?
What did you say? Which relationship?
Long relationship. He used to come to Cleveland to work in therapy with some of us. He was from New York, and I was one of his patients, and I was very involved in therapy. And he was not what shall I call it? There was nothing conventional about him. He was a iconoclast in a way, and he lived a very different life from mine. He was homosexual for one thing, and he was intellectual beyond my scope. He was informed on intellectual matters way beyond my information. And I liked that. And I want some of that in my being. But I knew I could never do it. I wasn't that kind of a person. And so somehow this contrast between my conventionality and my iconoclasm, or I don't know what you'd want to call it, may not be the right word. I don't think I thought of it a lot this way, but as you ask the question, that's what comes to my mind. I began to be with people who were beyond my narrow circles of people I loved. I didn't stop loving them. I first was introduced to that kind of thing in the psychology department at Western Reserve, where there were people who were not conventional, and I joined with them in many ways. I learned how to drink martinis. And I ended up loving martinis. But I was a novice in that direction. And I learned, like I have to tell you that in the 1960s, there was a point at which I was wearing beads. Can you imagine that?
These? What do you mean?
Beads. Like a necklace.
Beads. Yes, I can. I think when I met you, Irv, you used to have something on your neck when I met you.
What's that?
I think when I met you, you used to have something on your neck.
Maybe so. When that must have been around 1980.
Yes, 81.
Yeah. I suppose I could have learned earlier than that.
You always had a ring. You always had a ring, right?
Oh, a ring, a wedding ring.
Not a wedding ring, also a ring with color.
I think I did. Yes.
It was blue.
Yeah.
It was very beautiful.
Whatever beautiful I had was from Miriam. She knew beauty.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Didn't. I can't say I don't know anything about it or don't care about it. I do. But nowhere near that level that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Miriam herself was a different world for me. She was more from the world of arts, and I was more from the world of Major League Baseball.
Don't believe it for a second.
Yeah, I was a big sports fan. And I used to play a lot. Not well, I mean, I didn't play at the level of college player or anything like that, but I used to play a lot of baseball and basketball and football in the streets and in the playgrounds when I was growing up.
Irv, I heard a lot of your humility and modesty. Can you brag for a second about something?
You're giving me the ticket, are you?
Yes, I do.
Glad to let in. Be let in. Okay. Yeah, what about it?
I want to hear you saying something that you're really proud of yourself.
Well,
I invite you.
yes. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but there's some way in which I tune into what's going on and care about it.
Yes.
And I don't know, I grew up very silent. And I used to love lying on my stomach when the family would get together and just listening to their stories. It was a great pleasure to me. I didn't have anything to offer, and I didn't even know what the stories were about, but I liked hearing the stories. It was as though it was music without the words. And I don't, I don't know. I've just been. I found a way in about the middle of my college years where what I understood seemed worth understanding.
Say it again, Irv, the last sentence.
Found a way in which, in my middle college years, for matters of intellectual and social and cultural meaning meant a lot to me, whereas previously I never even thought about it. I mean, my community has always meant a lot to me, but I never thought about it. So I've always been with friends, and what am I trying to answer?
What are you proud of about yourself?
Yes. I'm proud of having made my way work in many respects. I have found a work that has been hospitable to my skills. I have a sensibility for what's going on in another person, not in its deeper meanings, but in its immediacy. And I can tune into it. And I think people know that I am indeed interested.
Yes. I vote for that.
What?
I vote for that. I agree.
Okay. And so the major public affirmation, certain things that I became the chairman of the faculty at the Gestalt Institute. When I was in graduate school, I was given a fellowship. These were introductions to something more than I'm Irv. And it felt like whatever it was I was doing, and I wasn't sure what it was being valued. And I grew up feeling valued, but not for anything specific that I ever did. I was just loved without out much content. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean, like, I wasn't told I was good at this or good at that or good at the other thing or good at, I wasn't taught how to do things. I miss that. I think my life would have been very different if I had had more instruction growing up than I did. But I think I learned some things not having instruction also. So you take the bitter with the sweet, but I would be a much more learned person and fertile person if I had those things. But,
I'm thinking full circle from your father who didn't ask you to slow down at the synagogue, which is the same. That you would have liked him to ask you to slow down, but actually you were all right with him not asking you.
well, I was getting away with it.
Exactly. And I wonder if you want to say anything else, or you want to put a full stop, or where are you?
I'm okay, you're okay, and that's okay.
You walk the talk.
I enjoy talking.
I love talking to you, Irv. You're a very special man and a very special human being. And
Well,
I vote for everything you say about yourself. I have experienced all of it in different ways.
very good.
And your very clean generosity.
Thank you.
And yeah, there are some words in Hebrew that you don't know and the people that are listening don't know that pop into my mind that I can't repeat because they're not translatable. But something about
Feel for them. I read during most of my years growing up. I know what I was saying, but I was very good at reading it.
But there is something that we say that it's said differently, but translates to a person who looks the other person in the eye in a simple, leveled way, which I really like about you.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome.
What's the Hebrew words?
Lelo meso panim. The literal translation, lelo is without. Meso is a very posh word for patronizing or feeling bigger or higher. And panim is face. So what it says is that it's a person that doesn't have a face that looks at you as if you are better than me.
Okay.
It's not said lightly.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you, even if it were not about me.
Listen, push come to shove. We know one another since 81. It's many, many years.
Yes, anyway, that's 40 years, isn't it?
You were a bit younger than me now when we met.
Pretty incredible.
It is incredible.
It's a very strange experience to be old. I mean, really old. And I would have thought that I would find myself in a new world. But it's not. So it's just life is life. And while content matters, it doesn't obliterate life.
No.
And I still feel attentive. I feel like I know what's going on around me. I'm interested in the world at large. I like reading. I say I like reading. I can't read anymore because of my eyes. But which reminds me of another thing. I can't read, so I listen to tapes of novels and other things. And what I find is I'm listening to a novel on my iPad, I'm likely to fall asleep. But the novel goes on. They don't know I fell asleep.
I love it.
I don't know where I am. So I have to hunt for where I was or just forget about and just have gaps in my knowledge. Yeah, but so someone asked me, since I don't have a lot that I have to do like I used to, are you ever bored? I say, no, I'm never bored because I really like sleeping.
That is the funny Irv. But
What?
I can't, this is the funny Irv, but I can't believe that you have ever been bored.
I've been wishing I were somewhere else or in some.
I'm sure.
Like,
I'm sure bored is not in your vocabulary.
there are times when I would wish to be bored.
That's different.
Yeah.
I'm really moved by what you just said, as I'm not that young anymore as well. I'm also in the old side.
It's all just life. Life.
Yes, and I'm really, really moved by what you said. I fall asleep and the novel continues.
Huh?
I hear it in a much bigger way than you probably went when you said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It touches me. You touch me, as you have done many times.
Thank you. Okay, my keep safe.